We're talking with Gary Graff on Gorman in the Morning, 501 essential albums of the 1990s. Okay, Gary, so safe to say that you have listened to at least 501 albums that were released in the 1990s.
In the 90s and in the 80s, because we've got the new 80s book coming out as well. So it's been at least 1,002.
I like a book. I like that it says this book is designed to start arguments. Right
Yes.
there, the mission statement is perfect.
Exactly. And it is. I mean, music is such a subjective thing. I mean, even in putting together the book with all the contributors we had as part of it, you know, there would be times at concerts here in Detroit, where I'm based, where 5 or 6 of us would be in the same row covering a concert.
Right.
And between the acts, the conversations about the books and what were going to be the 501 got, let's say, passionate.
Yeah.
So passionate that people around us were like gesturing to security. Like these people are going to start swinging at each other. You got to get here.
That's great. This book it's fantastic. Every genre is represented, pop, hip hop, country, world music, etc. But for our purposes, we're going to stick to the rock records as this is a rock station. So, but my first thought when I saw it, anytime anyone talks about the 90s for any reason, I always say it's really the last decade that we will remember as a decade. Before downloads, before social media, before all the lines were obliterated, we could still have water cooler conversations about records in the 1990s. And for that reason alone, it still has a glow to me.
You just summarized my introduction to the book. That was exactly it. The 90s were the last golden era, golden decade for the album. We could argue about the 80s as maybe the best, the 70s as the coming of age, but in the 90s, we still cared. Like you just described, you came to work, or you came to, you got together with your friends at night and you were going to talk about music and you were going to talk about albums. And they really made a difference. We listened to them as albums. And, in the 90s was when the albums, you had the CD and it's like, okay, we got to fill up all 79 minutes or whatever it was on a CD. So you were essentially getting double albums on a regular basis. And then when like Smashing Pumpkins puts out Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, a 2 CD set, so that would have been All Things Must Pass.
Right.
Or the equivalent of something like that. But it really was the last of the golden eras of albums.
So in this book, you guys you take it year by year, start with 90 through. You're not necessarily saying these are the top 5 albums of a year. You're not ranking them, but simply, or I should say, really, you're more reminding the reader of which records resonated the most and why. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mission of the book is you want to be able to hand it to somebody and say, you want to know about the 90s, here's these 501 albums of all genres. This is what music in the 90s was.
Well, when we got copies here, and it's the classic book where you just open any page.
Right.
You don't. It doesn't matter. Every time I open it, I just whatever page I'm on, I just start reading.
I call it either a needle drop or a bathroom read, depending on which way you want to go.
Yeah. Either way, it makes perfect sense. I saw, in all sincerity, dozens of records that I hadn't thought about in years. And just even the image before I read the assessment, it just made me want to go back and listen to them. I think for everybody listening that remembers the 90s so fondly, you really don't remember how much you remember. You know what I mean? It's almost overwhelming to recognize how many big, impactful, visceral records there really were that decade.
It's funny because, when we first decided to launch the series, I'm like, 501, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. And then after we made the spreadsheet of 2,501, then it's like, oh my God, how are we going to do just 501?
Yeah.
But you had so many bands and artists just cooking, present company here included, just cooking with records out there, putting them out on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And, it was really an interesting exercise to go through everybody's catalog and all those great albums to decide, okay, so what's the essential among these?
Right. It's interesting. I mean, recency bias as an expression, I looked at it in the 90s in reverse, which is it was better in the 80s. It was better in the 70s. You know, like it's so easy to get caught up in the moment when you look back. And I was at that age, the 90s for me, that's my mid 20s to my mid 30s. And so, and as I was busy with my own band, as you said, but still you look around and sometimes you think, it was cooler when the Replacements first hit the scene. It was cooler when REM first hit the scene. But again, with all this separation now, I do flip through this book in kind of awe. It really is. And like you said, the 70s were the establishing years. The 80s were the first kaleidoscope of all genres. But man, the 90s really, it sits right next to those two easily as every bit it's equal in terms of the volume and the quality of the work across the board.
And you had so many scenes, musical scenes that were going full bore. You know, then rock, a very potent time for rock. Hip hop, rap was really finding its legs. Jazz was finding a way to exist as a modern, you know, a contemporary form. You know, when you do have so many of those jazz albums that incorporated hip hop production techniques or collaborations with rappers, gospel too. And then you had country figuring out that, wait a minute, we're rock and roll.
Yeah.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
And the country story is as much marketing as it is music.
Of course.
But they very much followed a lot of the rock and roll models to become the dominant genre it became.
Gary Graff's with us on Gorman in the Morning. The book, 501 Essential Albums of the 1990s, designed to start arguments. Indeed. Now, you and I are buddies. We've known each other forever. So it's weird to think of it, to frame a question like this to you. But as a music writer or a music critic or as a fan, do you listen to albums differently, or is Gary the same Gary, depending on what, it's your job, but you're also such a passionate fan. And all that to say, how many times do you sit with a record? How often, or how long does it take for you to get a real handle on how music is hitting you? Are you still able to do it as a fan? Do you have to overthink it?
You know, so you don't do what I do. You do what I do because you're a fan. That's what you start as, but then you become a critical fan, which is dangerous for the artist because you come in with the critical faculties, you come in with the fan expectations.
Sure.
So there's a lot that goes into it. I can't do anything without I don't want to say criticizing, but I can't do anything without my critical faculties.
Sure.
Going in, and that's whether I'm eating at McDonald's or going to a baseball game, watching a movie on TV or listening to music. That's just that's just who you are. And in terms of how much you listen and how much you pay attention, it varies. I mean, there are some albums you don't get the full gist of the first time through, and then there are some that after 4 songs, I'm writing the review. I'll listen to the rest of the album, but I've got it either positively or negatively. And usually it's funny, Steve. Usually it's the positive reviews that come like that. Like, we're 4 songs in. This is freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
I know what I want to say already, and then you just fill it in.
Well, I can appreciate, or I can say I can verify the critical analysis you bring after countless exchanges with you after shows I've just played. I recognize the, hey, how's it going? And the, hey, that was great. There's different angles right away. I could always get a sense of how you felt about the gig, just on, always friendly and always great to see you. But it was like, I guess we swing and a miss tonight for Gary on that one.
Never too many times with your band.
Yeah,
which I'm happy to say. There are others where I'll be in a position of talking to somebody afterwards and did you see the moon tonight?
Yeah, sure.
Something like that.
Is there a silly question? Probably, but maybe there's a real easy answer. Is there one album from the 90s you can say you probably listened to more than any other?
That is a great question. And again, I'm not trying to play to the home team here, but Southern Harmony is up there.
Yeah.
Black
All right,
Crowes
that
album.
checks out.
That legitimate. And I was thinking about that even as I was doing the book, because I wrote the entry for that one in particular. And I just remember getting it and really digging it at the time. And it's one of the ones I keep going back to. But there are others. The first two Oasis albums, certainly. There's the Replacements. There are later albums that are in the book. I went to, look at the book cover. It'll tell me who. You always go back to the Chronic. Certainly, anything. A lot of for me, personal listening is usually what am I not hearing from other sources. What's not being licensed out there all the time, or what's not on radio if I do listen to radio when I'm driving in the car. So I want to hear the stuff. World Party, Goodbye Jumbo. There's another good one. I mean, that was one of my favorite ones when it came out, and it's only become favoriter over the decades.
501 Essential Albums of the 1990s. It's fantastic. When is the 80s book? When are we going to see that one?
80s, I believe it's May 22nd.
Oh, right around the corner.
We're right on top of that. That is also designed to cause arguments.
Oh, the 80s. So I said 90s for me, that's 25 to 35. Boy, the 80s, 15 to 25, that's fighting years. That's fighting for my band's years right there, boy.
And I'm expecting that to be the case. This was another book where I had some particularly passionate contributors.
I'm sure.
And one of them lives in my house. So,
nice.
I have found the comfortable parts of our back patio to sleep in when I.
Very good. Well, to establish your bona fides, I have to ask, first album you ever bought with your own money?
Would you believe Steppenwolf for Ladies Only?
Yeah, I would.
I was a Steppenwolf fan from when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
And it was $1.99 at the National Record Mart in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh.
Beautiful.
And I had $2 in my pocket.
That's all it took.
Not their best moment.
Okay, now, first concert you saw, not where your parents dragged you or an older cousin, but where it was like I got to see this band, I got to see this singer. The first real concert for you.
Yeah, Jethro Tull and Rainbow, Richie Blackmore's Rainbow at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena.
Oh, that's awesome.
Way up in the rafters.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, dude, this is great. And we'll get you back on in a couple months to talk about the 80s book too.
Always available.
Yeah, excellent.
And happy to do this.